Hi, in this video we're going to start discussing our valuation model for Ultratech Cement. Now, Ultratech Cement is India's largest cement firm, and we are basically going to build a model of valuation for this company. And we already have a template which gives us the last 4 financial years of data for Ultratech Cement. This is standalone data, and we are going to look at how do we build on the consolidated data piece into this, right? So that's the data that is available. This is the balance sheet. The numbers are in INR crore, and we have the balance sheet data here. We also have a P&L here, and we see that these numbers are again in INR crore, and the profit and loss statement of this company is mentioned here, right? For the last 4 financial years, that's what we have. Now, that's basically the crux of how we are going to build this model. This is a cement manufacturer. We will obviously need some of the basic resources around this company which are available on its website. So we can go to its website and go to the investors tab here. And on the investors tab, we could go to the financials tab here, right? And when we click on financials, we get a slew of reports which are available here. We're going to focus one on the annual report. So I'm going to click on this and download the annual report. We are also going to look at previous year annual reports. So you could pick out the last 2 years of annual reports just to look at the numbers and understand and read a little bit from those annual reports around the management discussion and analysis. The company gives quarterly results which are available for each of the years. And there is an investor presentation data which is also available. Given that we are in March of 2017 at this point of time, the investor presentation for 2017 is available, and we can download this as well. This might give data about what is the current capacity, etc. of the company and so on and so forth. After every quarter results, the company also does a transcript of the conference call, and that could also be downloaded. So for example, Q4 FY16 results, Ultratech Cement Limited, there is a call transcript which is available. In these call transcripts, we can typically get answers to the queries or questions that we have about the company, right? So that's the broader premise on what we are looking at about the company and what we are working with in terms of the data that is available. We have the annual report, we have a corporate presentation, we have other data that is available on the website itself in case we want to kind of try and find out. There are subsidiary accounts also available. So practically, if we want, we can merge the subsidiary accounts into the overall accounts of the firm and then do a consolidated valuation. Alternatively, we can value the standalone company once, and then at a later point of time, we will add the subsidiary accounts to the overall discussion that we have had, right? Let's go here. Obviously, to kind of continue with this analysis, we will need to build an assumption sheet just like we did for other models. So here we have to build an assumption sheet here and try and kind of understand how does cement get produced and try and understand the broader drivers of cement as we go along, right? So to understand the cement business, let's try and understand the identification of some of the major drivers of cement. So obviously this is a manufacturing firm, unlike the earlier ones that we have discussed. And manufacturing firms typically will deal in terms of production. So 2 or 3 things will happen here. The first important thing that will happen is that the data, the drivers will get linked to the production volume, right? So if we are giving the data in terms of what is the capacity, we need to know what the capacity is. We need to know what is the utilization of that capacity. In other words, if the capacity is 100 million ton, how much is the production, right? They may or may not be using the entire production capacity. So what is the production capacity that is happening? Then we need to find out per unit price, right? We need to find out per unit price and then arrive at revenue drivers. Similarly, we need to find out per unit costs, right? Now the unit would be either kg or it would be ton or some of the units that are used in the cement industry. We can also go back and try and look at the P&L to broadly understand what kind of data we are dealing with, right? So let's go to the P&L and look at the P&L and we realize, let's try and highlight which are the biggest costs that we see here, right? So cost of material is a big cost that we see here. Then power and fuel is a huge cost in this industry, and freight and forwarding expenses is a huge cost, right? So these are the three major headers that we see that come, and each of them is equally important, freight being the largest one, followed by power and fuel, and followed by cost of materials consumed. So it might be an interesting task to actually project costs individually for these segments and try and figure out a cost per ton kind of a measure for this particular company, right? On the assumption sheet, therefore, it is important for us to build in the capacity, right? And I'll introduce a row here just to ensure that we know what the capacity is in. So it's in million tons usually that the company will disclose the capacity. We will find that out in million tons, and growth in capacity is what we are going to include here in million tons, right? Then we are going to look at what has been the production volume. That's again in million tons. And for historical years, we can find out whether everything that is produced has been sold or not. So sales volume, again in million tons. We'll see if we want to add more line items to this, but the bare minimum data that is needed is this data. And then on this, we are going to build our broad revenue drivers, correct? So that's what we will need in terms of the capacity. Where do we find the capacity? The capacity should be available in the annual report, right? So when we go to the annual report, you will find the standard stuff in terms of what's available in terms of the letter to shareholders. And in the letter to shareholders, there must be a mentioning of the overall capacity that is there, right? So let me briefly dwell on the milestones reached in this year. Year saw commissioning of grounding units in Haryana and West Bengal, etc. Consequently, your company's cement capacity has climbed up to 66.3 million tons per annum from 60.2 in the previous year. Then they have also done an acquisition of cement plants with Jayaprakash Associates. These plants have a capacity of 21.2. Acquisition will be in 12 months. After this, the company's capacity should rise to 87.5. And with overseas operations and ongoing expansion, total capacity would be 91.1 million tons per annum, approximately, right? So what we are saying is when we look at this data, two things come out. One of the important things, and we will probably read more important parts of this. Right now, what we have in data is that here, the total capacity of the firm should become 87.7, right? This assumes the company has incorporated or included the Jayaprakash Cement data into the company here, right? Here, the capacity, obviously, because that data is not entirely available, is about 66.3 million tons. And previous year, this number was 60.2 million tons. That is what has been told. This is the standalone data. There is some overseas operations, which is small operations, and some ongoing capex, which will take it to 91.1. When it comes, right? The second important thing that you see is there is a 26 megawatt waste heat recovery systems. Total waste heat recovery capacity is 59 megawatt. Megawatts are basically the capacity for power plants. So we are talking about a power plant for this company, right? Besides this, the company has 717 megawatt thermal power capacity, which caters to 88% of total power requirement. So total power capacity is close to about 770 megawatts. And why is there a power plant set up by a cement company? Because when we saw the P&L, power and fuel was one of the biggest costs. So the company has actually put in what is called as a captive power plants. They have put in the power plant for their own requirement, correct? So that's the other important task that we find in terms of the power plants. Let's try and build the capacity and sales volume into the sheet. As we keep going ahead, we will find somewhere we will see the data in terms of financial highlights, right? So they do give cement production and cement sales volume for this data. Now, another thing that we need to know is that clinker is typically an input into cement. Clinker is an input into cement. Sometimes you basically sell out direct clinker, but that's basically a small amount itself. So the final output of cement is what we are worried about. You will also see that production and sales are approximately similar each of the years, right? There's no real difference or material difference in production and sales quantity of these companies. So I can put 47 and 47 here, and that should basically work. I'm not going to change that too much. So this production volume is 47.7. Sorry, that is the sales volume, 47.7, and production volume is 47.4, right? 0.6 actually, 47.6. Last year, this number was, sorry, this is for 2016, so you have to put it here. We don't know that number yet for 2017. 44.12, 41.13. So we are going to put 44.12, 41.13, and the year before that is 40.16, right? And the production numbers that we see are 43.88, followed by 40.79, followed by 40.13. These are the production numbers that we see. What we can do is just format all of this to get this data. So we do have the production and sales volume available with us, and production and sales volume basically are very, very close to each other. So to that extent, that number doesn't change too much. We do need the capacity data. Obviously, all financial highlights are available, and we can check the numbers from here as well. But we do need, and if you look at the next page, it gives you data for the previous few years as well. Now we need to look at the capacity data, and that's the sales volume once again, in terms of what domestic sales has been done and what exports has been done, and so on and so forth for 2016. And that's the data that is available, which we have already plugged in. Now let's look at the capacity, installed capacity that we have. We have an installed capacity in 2016 for gray cement. This is in million tons per annum, 64 million tons per annum. And white cement is 14.8 lakh metric tons. This is million tons, this is lakh tons. So if I was to convert this into million, this has to get divided by 10, right? So I can divide it by 10. So this becomes 1.4, 1.4 plus 64.65, 1.5 plus that will give around 66.2, which is what we have put in here, 66.3 approximately, right? Last year 60.15 and 1.4, that should basically give us a number of somewhere close to 62. So we might just want to change this to 61.5 kind of a number, and that's because it includes the gray cement and white cement. Remember, in the standalone data they'll probably have both the gray cement and white cement data, so we need to kind of just include that. The realizations might be different, but we are combining the two that we are saying, right? So that's the capacity data that we have. This is from the 2015-16 annual report. If we go to an earlier annual report, for example, so let's say we go to the 2013-14 annual report and try and download this annual report, I think this is where they should give data about the capacity for those 2 years, right? So that's the capacity in FY14, installed capacity for gray cement, and FY13 53.9, and this, and then you have 1.36, again divide by 10, white cement 1.36 plus 53.95. So effectively what are we saying? We are saying 53.9 plus 1.4, so that data will come here, is equals to 53.9 plus 1.4. And the year before that was 50.9 plus 1.4, so is equal to 50.9 plus 1.4. That's the data that is available on the capacity. Now clearly the company is not utilizing its capacity completely, right? So we can calculate the utilization, and this will be in percentage terms. What is utilization of capacity here? That's basically your production divided by your overall capacity, right? Production divided by overall capacity, and that number has been very low, has stabilized around 71%, hit a low of 71% in this year. We still don't know the numbers of FY17. We're going to plug that in, but it tells you that the industry is working on a lower suboptimal capacity utilization. Why is that? We might get some answers here, where we are saying sector capacity utilization is 60%. So overall, the sector itself is a capacity utilization that is much lower. Why is that? Is probably because of higher expansion by a lot of the other players. So total capacity itself could be significantly larger. That's one of the presentations that is available. We can look at other investor presentations, probably last year end investor presentation or one just after that might be extremely useful. So we can actually look at the investor presentation for May 2016, download this as well. And this is probably going to be one of the major inputs into our exercise of understanding how the cement industry works, right? So, so if we look at this report of 2016 May, then in this somewhere it talks about Indian cement sector. So some of these companies also give a detailed information about the cement sector. It might be worthwhile to go through some of this. So it tells you what is the largest market capacity globally, who is the biggest capacity holder. So China is the largest player, followed by India. It's the second largest market globally with 405 million ton per annum capacity, right? Ultratech's capacity is about 87 out of this entire thing, approximately, right? Now with the combined forces, 2400 million tons per annum is China's capacity that we see. Market composition, it's a huge market in north and south of India. West and east is less capacity in terms of these data points. Then you go further, then you see per capita cement consumption across countries. India is lowest amongst all the developing countries like China, Turkey, Vietnam, Russia, Brazil, US, etc. US is developed, obviously. And the world average is 580. So we are at 1/3 of cement consumption, obviously because of lack of infrastructure that we have seen so far. Indian cement industry, what is the demand supply scenario? This data is relevant, and at some point of time, we're probably going to use this data. So the gray bars or the greenish bars that you see tell the capacity, and the production you see is on the red or maroon bars that you see. So overall capacity utilization numbers are given here, and we realize that capacity utilization industry-wide was 68%, has gone to 65, 66, expected to increase now in the next few years, right? This data may be useful, so we might want to put in this data in some of our overall discussion. So we can actually just put in a data here itself saying industry capacity in India and put that in million and industry production, and we can say industry utilization. This is for the entire cement industry, right? And I'm going to put in the million tons data here. So we're going to say Control C and put that here. And what's the capacity in the last 4 years? Let's just put those numbers. FY16 is 405. So that's 405. That's the capacity. What's the one before that? 392, 368, 357, 392, 368, 357. Remember, this data is being picked up from the investor update for May 2016. This is where we are pulling out this data from. Investor conference presentation, May 2016. That's where this data is available. So we have put in the industry capacity. What's the industry production? 267, 267, 255, 247, and 241. So capacity utilization industry wide is a percentage term that we can find here, and we can calculate it here. Let's format this data in terms of numbers, and we have a number crunching done, where we realize that the capacity utilization of Ultratech, given that it's the market leader, is usually higher than that of the industry. So if we believe that the industry capacity utilization will go up in the future, then logically Ultratech's capacity utilization should also go up in the future. And that would be one of the important ingredients of our overall analysis as we go along evaluating Ultratech cement, right? That's broadly it in this particular video. In the next video, we're going to try and work out on the revenue drivers of this company. Thank you.